They're trying to rig this case right from under Diddy. At this point, we got to ask ourselves, man, when is enough enough? At some point, we got to ask ourselves, man, if these folks had enough, if they had a strong enough case, then why all the trickery? Why all the nonsense, the malarkey, the buffoonery, the blasphemy? Why all the tricks and hoops? Why not just run a straight up case and convict this man if you guys believe that this man is guilty and you guys have enough? The more trickery we see happen in court, the more I start to think, man, do they have enough to convict Diddy? Is Diddy really guilty of trafficking in the RICO? I don't know what takes place in other countries. I'm sure they have their own rules and regulations. But in America, you have a right to be judged by a jury of your peers. Now, a jury of your peers don't necessarily mean same race, but it does help. And race is a factor in the justice system. Like, can you imagine if George Zimmerman went to trial for Trayvon Martin and his jury was 8 black men and 4 black women? Do you honestly believe that George Zimmerman could have gotten a fair trial? Do you honestly believe that George Zimmerman will look at that jury and think, I'm getting a fair shake at things? Probably not. And the outcome would have probably been a whole lot different if it was 8 black men and 4 black women. Imagine being a black man in 1947 and you're being accused of committing a bank robbery, but you're 5'2" and dark skinned. But the suspect that they described is 6'7" and light skinned. So you thinking, bro, I'm about to get off. Nobody in their right mind can look at this evidence and think I did it. And then you walk in that courtroom and you look to your left, and this is the jury of your peers. This is the gentleman who are going to decide your fate. Even though you know you're 100% guilty, can you imagine the horrors that's going through your mind? Because you understand you cooked, you guilty, bruh. You not talking yourself out of this, buddy. You life. Even though you and those people live in the same neighborhoods, probably visit the same parks, probably around the same age, probably grew up in the same neighborhood, it don't matter. You still look at race as a factor because you understand, man, there are just certain things that people won't be able to relate to. Research conducted in Florida found that all white juries convicted black defendants 81% of the time, whereas white defendants were only convicted 66% of the time. Now, let's go to the other side, okay? Juries with at least one black juror resulted in a 76% conviction of black defendants and a 77% conviction for white defendants. So when there's diversity, it feels like the outcome is more fair and is more similar, right? White defendants is 76, black defendants is 77. I just say that to stress how important and crucial the jury selection is at this Diddy trial. Now, Diddy was able to get 2 black men on his jury pool. To me, that's fair, right? But you can't have all 12 be black men. Now, at that point, you're not pushing for equality, you're pushing for privilege. So 2 being black men out of the 12, I think that's somewhat fair. You're somewhat being represented. It's New York. The prosecutors who already fought tooth and nails to not include those 2 black male jurors, they're now coming back trying to remove one of the black male jurors 3 weeks into the case.
Bernardo, you were in that courtroom when the juror was dismissed and then the judge says he'd reconsider. What was that moment like?
It was complete chaos because Juju, to this moment, I still don't know, was he really actually dismissed? Because the judge said that he would consider, and if he changes his mind, he'll let the parties know. And even when he stated that he had everyone exit the courtroom, had their attorneys inside the courtroom, and said that this is going to be a sealed proceeding. We waited outside. We saw 15 of the jurors go downstairs, and the one juror that hadn't gone downstairs yet was that juror that was at the center of this attention. 20 minutes inside of that courtroom, we go back. We're allowed in the courtroom. Still no answer as to what happened. But of course, all of us know that you were interviewing that juror. So it causes a lot of concern because we don't know the uncertainty. Is this juror going to return on Monday? If he returns on Monday during the weekend, did anyone reach out to him? Did he watch the news? Did he read about himself? Does he know what people are talking about? Does it change his mind of how he's going to evaluate the facts in this case and how he's going to deliberate? Will he be excused anyway because of what he's been exposed to over the weekend? So we don't know. If that juror is actually excused, what's going to happen is that on Monday, alternate juror number 1, which I believe is a Caucasian male, is going to replaced juror number 6, and now you have a new set of the 12 new deliberating jurors.
And the defense brought up the issue of race and
Yes.
the lack of diversity, if that's the case. How do you think that will go down?
So in terms of course, you know, a diverse jury and a jury of your peers, you know, people with different backgrounds, we bring different perspectives to the table, especially when you're talking about Sean Combs, a hip hop artist, and when you're talking about the victims in this case, and you're talking about this lifestyle, we bring more insight to the table, to the conversation, to evaluating these charges, and that's why it's really important to have a diverse jury of your peers.
Usually when a juror is dismissed 3 weeks into trial, it's usually because of something very serious. It's a serious transgression that can't be ignored. The reason why prosecutors were pushing so hard to get this juror dismissed, like pushing, they won't let it go. I don't think the reason why they were pushing that hard really meets the severity of how they were treating it. If this juror was not one of the black males, if he was, let's say, a white woman, which is the demographic that I believe is going to convict Diddy, I don't think they will be pushing to dismiss this woman. But because it's a black male juror and they understand, if you get rid of one of those black dudes, man, you know, the percentage of him being convicted like rises up by probably like 10%. The prosecutors went back and combed over all the fine details and requested to dismiss a juror from the panel after he allegedly gave conflicting answers about where he lives. So when he was answering the questions, the man apparently gave different answers to questions about where he primarily lives. So he put in either New York or across the Hudson River in New Jersey with his girlfriend. Now, one can surmise that, yeah, he probably stays with his girlfriend at times or stay in New York at times. He probably has 2 different locations. However, they apparently seen that as a red flag. Here's the most hilarious part in clear corruption. So the judge is saying, yeah, I'm leaning towards this. I'm going to think about it because I don't know. So eventually he also said in court that the reason why he was thinking about this, which from my perspective, is it that big of a deal? The judge is saying, yes, it's a huge red flag and a huge big deal. And here's why he thinks it's a huge red flag and a huge big deal. That's such a big deal that he don't believe that he could do his duty as a juror. By the end of the court day, the judge said there were serious questions about his candor and ability to follow instructions. Not that he was corrupt or that he broke any rules or that, I don't know, he was seeming a little biased. He went home and watched a couple of things. No, because he answered the question in the manner they're like, you ain't really followed the instructions correctly when filling out, like the question answer during the jury selection process. 3 weeks into trial, they catch it and they're saying, after 3 weeks of following directions, they say that there's serious question about his candor and ability to follow instructions. So hence, the judge is saying, I'm leaning towards dismissing this guy. Pure corruption, absolute malarkey. Now, Diddy and his set of attorneys feel the same way that a lot of people feel when they hear this. So they rushed to give the judge a warning. Like, they wrote the judge a letter. They filed it in court. We all have the letter. And they said, hey, bruh, if you go through with this, just know we're going to be filing for mistrial. This is not cool. It's not correct. What are y'all doing? Because he answered that he lives in 2 different places. What? Dismissal 3 weeks? No. And also dismiss one of the only 2 black males as jurors? Not happening, judge. You do this, we filing for mistrial, bro. It's ball game. So here is the letter they gave to the judge. And it also listed out reasons why this juror should not be dismissed. And here are their reasons. Diddy's defense will argue that there's an importance of jurors' perspective due to his and Diddy's shared background. And he has more similarities with Diddy's background than anybody else, including the other black juror. Now, the defense will write, the juror, a black man, shares a similar racial background with Mr. Combs, which is critical in a case involving serious charges of essay misconduct. The defense argues that the juror's perspective is essential for fair deliberations, especially given the nature of the allegations involving consensual versus coerced essay activities, Removing him would deprive Mr. Combs of a juror who might relate to his experiences and provide a unique viewpoint during deliberations. They would also say there's no factual basis for dismissal. The defense asserts there is no evidence of material inconsistencies in the juror statements. They would also argue that any perceived discrepancies is benign and do not indicate deceit or bias, and the juror's willingness to serve is viewed as a positive factor reflecting his commitment to civic duty rather than evidence of an agenda or bias. These people so cold as damn if you do, damn if you don't. The jurors say, no, I want to serve. No, I've been here for 3 weeks. I want to continue. They're saying, red flag. The fact that he wants to be on jury duty is a red flag. He probably knows Diddy. And it's like, what? And what they're getting him for isn't like, there's no like proof that this man deliberately lied. Or there's not even proof that he lied at all. He just, hey, bruh, at times I live here, at times I live there. He put 2 different locations. And they're saying because he put 2 different locations, that's proof that he can't follow instructions. So 3 weeks into the trial, he gotta go. Does that seem fair? Not at all, not one bit. The court's initial assessment supports retaining the juror. So during the morning session on June 13th, the court indicated that there was an insufficient basis to conclude a juror was intentionally deceitful. The court noted that the juror's answer could be reconciled and were likely innocent, suggesting no grounds for removal at that stage. The court acknowledged that the issue arose from an offhand comment made by the juror to jury department staff, not from any deliberate misconduct. Higher standard for dismissing a city juror. Now, to me, this is the one that I think we really need to hone on, bro. There has to be a higher standard to dismiss a juror 3 weeks into trial. The defense argues that once a jury is impaneled, the standard for dismissing a juror is higher than during, the selection process, right? Like the selection process, anybody can go. But if you call for them, you can go. But when you're someone who you already been picked, you done heard the trial, we just can't dismiss you for any silly reason. The cases cited by both sides involve more extreme circumstances than the minor inconsistencies alleged here, which do not justify removal. Now, they also says that, he could give reconcilable answers. Like, what he did isn't beyond a pale of forgiving. The court itself noted that the juror's answers about his residence, living in the Bronx, and family, mentioned his fiancée and daughter, could be reconciled. For example, the juror may have understood the question about where he lives to refer to his legal residence, and his recent move out of the Bronx in the last 2 weeks could explain any ambiguity. This is also happening in the Southern District of New York. They're known for these Sham RICO cases, bro. At some point, I think somebody got to intervene when it comes to these RICO cases, bro. Because they're using, like the RICO case, bro, they're using the RICO now for anything. It was initially intended to hold mafia bosses, gang leaders, crime bosses accountable for things they've done. Now they're using the RICO to apply to any and everything, bro. It don't matter what it is. Any and everything, bro. Hey, you stole too many times at Walmart. The person who gave you a ride, did a leader? RICO. Because in this situation with Diddy, I feel like the RICO is been abused. And they understand that when you come from a particular environment, you understand you've been dealing with these RICO cases being applied unfairly all your lives. You've probably been affected personally by people in your family who then went to court on false RICO charges. You've probably, have family members, let's say in Atlanta, Georgia, where Fannie Willis is bringing RICO charges for anything. You sneeze wrong, it's a RICO. Where that's not what a RICO was intended to be for. So they understand somebody who comes from the Bronx, a black man, you grew up listening to Diddy. You grew up loving Diddy. There's no way you about to sit in court, man, and hear a RICO charge for having threesomes with women and escorts, man. Cut it out. They know that person ain't voting guilty. So now this is just maneuvers to get him out. And the person they're replacing him with is like a 68-year-old white man. It doesn't make sense at all. Diddy and his team of attorneys was even against the line of questioning, interrogating this juror further, because they feel like, bro, we're at a risk of intimidating this juror into voting guilty for Diddy. So further inquiry into the juror statements could have a negative and intimidating impact, potentially affecting his ability to serve impartially. The defense expressed concerns about the government's suggested line of questioning, which could imply a threat to the juror's employment. So, like, the government is threatening this dude's job, threatening his employment, asking him questions that implies they're now trying to charge him criminally. They're really trying to scare this dude into just voluntarily saying, I don't want to do it. I don't want to be a juror no more. And because the scare tactic didn't work, they're now saying it's suspicious. Yo, we're scaring his employment, scaring him with crimes, but he's still adamant on wanting to be a juror. That's suspicious. He must have a ulterior motive or an agenda that's pro-Diddy. These people are sick in the head. The defense will also quote a lack of evidence of bias or misconduct. They will say there's no evidence that the juror had a pre-existing agenda or bias in favor of either party. The defense argues that the court's later suggestion that the juror was trying to get onto the jury is unsupported, especially since the juror had already been serving for over 4 weeks. And they're only saying this because he's black, by the way. Unlike cases like United States versus Airline, where a juror engaged in misconduct, viewing unauthorized proceedings, there is no indication that this juror violated court instructions or engaged in prohibited conduct. Chilling effect on minority jurors. Dismissing the juror could discourage minority jurors, particularly Black and Hispanic individuals, from participating in jury services in the future. The defense cites the government's own acknowledgement of racial disparities in jury participation and argues that the juror's willingness to serve should be encouraged, not penalized. This is a fact. He should be, yo, oh my God, you want to serve? Oh my God, you are adamant in serving your community. But they feel like, hey, bro, because he a black man who grew up in, in a sketchy environment, in poverty, in the urban cities. They feel like, hold on, you probably know somebody who knows Diddy. There's probably a check on the line here for you, bro. Because usually, bro, hey, who wants to waste their time serving on the jury? You could go home today. You don't want to go home? Something is suspicious, bro. Dude, Diddy got a check in the streets? The letter didn't work, and the judge ultimately dismissed the juror completely and replaced them with a white man. So, I don't know what the next steps are. Diddy and his attorney stated they intend on filing for a mistrial. Brian Steele is currently on Diddy's team, so Brian Steele is known to effectively get mistrials, right? We've seen it in Georgia with Young Thug. Right, he chewed up that judge for dinner, bro. Yo, Brian still pissed off that judge so much, bro. The judge was throwing that man in jail. Like, the judge literally issued him to go to jail, right? And on every weekend for about like 6 months until he appealed it. So Brian Steele, if anyone I'm confident in getting a mistrial, is Brian Steele. But my perspective has always been the same, bro. If Diddy is guilty, lock him up. If he's innocent, free him. But I don't feel like anybody should relish or champion somebody's rights being violated. We shouldn't be able to watch a clear constitutional violation. We shouldn't be able to watch somebody clearly rig the game. If the case is strong enough, let the case be strong enough. It shouldn't be rigged for nobody. If the evidence is clear, this man was a mafia crime boss and ran a criminal organization, which is what he's being charged with, then it should be clear. You shouldn't need to do tricks to prove that. Let me know in the comment section, what do you guys think? Do you guys believe it was unfair for the judge to dismiss one of the only 2 black male jurors and replace him with a white man? Let me know in the comment section, all right? And if you're still watching, click on this video right here somewhere on my screen to find out, bro, why Drake is getting crazy backlash. Apparently they want to cancel Drake because Drake did this to a disabled fan. Click on this video right here to find out exactly what this is. I'm gonna see you guys in this video. I'm out of here, folks. Peace.